the people talk.
Freedom Radio.
All right, so we back. Liberation Education 2016. Let's we're gonna open this up real quick. That was that footage of of brother Jamar Clark. That footage that we just saw was taken probably the week toward the tail week of his shooting on Plymouth Avenue, probably the third day, where there was protests outside of the Minneapolis Police Department in North Minneapolis. And for the national audience or international audience, that is arguably the blackest part of the whole state of Minnesota, historically, that particular neighborhood. It was a very interesting kind of visual, and it says a lot. Black Lives Matter is definitely a movement. We have to acknowledge that, but we also have to think critically about a movement for who and for what. It appeared, and the video did not lie. As a journalist, I was being impartial. I made sure that I touched almost every face that was congregated in front of the police department, so the camera does not lie. It definitely appeared that the body there was at least 95% white, and the obviously the spokespeople for this were black. The Minnesota Vikings are probably 95% white owned. No, 99% white owned, but they have a few good black running backs and a quarterback that lead the team. So arguably you could say Black Lives Matter, at least in Minnesota, might be comparable to the Minnesota Vikings. But that's a whole nother conversation. But let's just say to our free-thinking audience, what are your takeaways from that, and how do we even unpack that as it plays out nationally or even locally? There hasn't been this kind of discussion that we've heard, independent analysis of this in a public forum. So we're just going to crack this open and see what happens. So I'm just going to go ahead and give our audience here a chance to kind of give a description and some thoughts to what they saw.
I hear the people talk.
When I say black lives, y'all say matter. Black lives 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 matter. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down.
Well, I recall, several months ago, Ralph, you did a screening at that church, and I guess the one young gentleman was there, and I asked him about what is your aim behind this, and he mentioned, well, first I said was, Black Lives Matter every second, every minute, every day, every week, every month. Okay, there's a black man killing another black man every day in this country. Police shootings come here or there. So the Black Lives Matter should be from trying to stop the hustling in the street, trying to get the black community together, get economics for the black community, put money back into the black community. The young man said no, and mentioned about a $1.6 billion surplus at the Capitol at St. Paul that they trying to get. So I don't believe in this Black Lives Matter, because they in for it for corporate economic gain. You know, we killing each other. That matters more than anything else. So what I think about that, I think is nothing. Point blank, it's nothing. Just another hoax.
And you know, we're gonna be balanced, and we're gonna, you know, these are the people. These are community. You might hear some things on liberation and education that you don't hear on a lot of other media platforms. So we're gonna open that dialogue up, and also give kind of supportive analysis from our platform as well. Anybody else have any kind of insight into the issues?
I hear the people talk.
Not done anything for black people. We have to face, because when they put us on the news and when they put us on the TV and put us out there, they put us out there as thugs, criminals. They put us out there, they don't tell the real stories of our resilient, strong, powerful people who are humans too. They're victims. They don't tell that story. And so since they've been irresponsible, unaccountable, they are not allowed in this space. We have black media here that's ours.
Do you feel like there's a well, it's more so a question for you. Do you feel like that there's a consistency? Do you see, is your major concern with Black Lives Matter locally, nationally, but do you see that there's some consistency of Black Lives Matter's movements across the country? Do you see, have you looked into and to see if in Oakland may be more like Black Lives Matter Minneapolis, maybe Black Lives Matter Detroit? Do you see that maybe with who's actually involved with Black Lives Matter from city to city, state to state, that there may be some inconsistencies where some of the push is stronger and less co-opted, so to speak, than in other cities? Because one of the things about locally is Black Lives Matter Minneapolis is different than Black Lives Matter St. Paul. They're both fucked up.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see, you know, Minneapolis is a different culture. St. Paul is a different culture. We're both the primary cities in the state of Minneapolis and Minnesota, but I do see some kind of the way you can differentiate those activities from this state to a city like Detroit, that's, you know, majority black in the high, probably 70 percentile, if not even higher, you know. But at the same time, you know, the root is the root, and whoever is behind the funding and the influence and the agenda behind the root moves the conversations and many times the main objectives of the branches.
Whose house? Our house. 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 Is Black Lives Matter sponsored by what? Brother, can you speak on that, brother? Please? For the people, brother, just for the people. Brother, is Black Lives Matter sponsored by white folks, brother? Just curious, brother. What's your perspective? Was it bought and sold, brother?
You know,
When black folks really stand up, brother, before the murder, does the Black Lives really matter?
there's one thing that's very interesting. We are in,
This is coming off of the sword struggle, brother, where I was the only black media there, and, you know, the people from Black Lives Matter just kind of ducked the question, brother. Brother, we're looking for insight, brother, into really what this is all about, brother, because the weed smell is right by the police station, and if this was all black, we would be getting clubbed and beaten down, brother. Could you give some perspective, brother? I got you in the light right now, brother, so it'll really play good, brother. What do you think, brother?
Honestly, I know that every movement that can cause a dent in the system, or it can cause progress, or really get on the road to liberation against oppression. In many respects, it tries to get watered down by different forces, whether they be external or internal.
Okay, brother. Okay.
Now, does the color of your skin necessarily mean that you are an agent or you are trying to water down a movement? Not necessarily.
That wasn't the question, though, brother.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I said,
No,
it's when there's a movement, brother, like, let's just say, is the Black Lives Matter movement, brother, is it sponsored by white folks?
It is sponsored by elements within the Democratic Party, for sure, yeah. And I don't think any major black institutions are pouring money into it. When I say major black institutions, I'm speaking of like Third World Press, Hakeem Matabuti. I'm thinking of a major black institution. I'm thinking of the African New School of Thought. I'm thinking about the policy think tank, Danny Glover and them in Washington, D.C., Trans Africa. I'm thinking about
Black Lives Matter needs to be studied. It needs to be critically analyzed from multiple levels of how it intersects with politics and the political machine of the Democratic and Republican parties. It needs to be analyzed in terms of the state and the local politics of governance.
I hear the people talk.
So, just a quick follow-up. So, what role does the independent black media play in that analysis, and being able to take a look at Black Lives Matter across the country, not just from the critical work that you've done, but with other cities?
Well, and this is a part of the mission of the Liberation and Education series. I mean, the part of the independent black media has to be defined. First of all, what is independent? You could arguably say that we do have independent black media. We have a long legacy of the black press that has been, quote unquote, independent for years. But if your independence is sponsored and supported by advertising dollars that are directly tied to the same interests that drives the machine of oppression in any city, then you're not too independent. So we have to kind of frame what is independent media, first of all, or independent black media, and then present a challenge to not only independent black media, but independent voices that many times are fearless enough to challenge the politics of the black political machine, of their local conversations, or the white political machines of their local conversations, because all the local issues have an intersection with the national discussion, and they're strongly connected to each other. So I think what we're trying to do right now is just crack open a different perspective of what is Black Lives Matter, how that relates to the black community, and what could be the final analysis of a situation. If you look at Jamar Clark, who was gunned down in public, and there was a lot of attention around Black Death at this point in time, just like there was a lot of attention directed to many other brothers who have died or sisters who have died a unfortunate death. But as we move forward past the death, is this attention done simply to mobilize a power base for money, or is it out of the good intentions of standing for what's in the best interest of the black community, and we have to also have things that are shown and demonstrated by the black media, independent black media for that matter, whether it be through photography, film, or video, or print journalism, that not only challenge us as a result of a crime or a death or a murder, but also challenges us to be self-dependent and self-determined, so that we can incubate ourselves a little more from a position of power. We're not just focused on Black death, but we're also focused on the survival of the people by having black business, by having black ownership of property, by having independent institutions in our community that host conversation of healing and wellness. So this is the charge of independent media and the charge of this particular discussion. But being that we're here and now with this major kind of discussion nationally and locally in this city about Black Lives Matter, it's only right that free independent thinkers, whether they really be black or white, take an opportunity to look a little deeper into the issues of the people.
We all have a right to be here. They have a right to be here, and we have a right.
Yeah, but we don't want the media here.
Your right to be here isn't the issue. What's the right to record? Oh, that's our right, just like it's your right to record.
Okay, but we don't want you telling our story.
We don't want you here.
We want to tell our own story.
We don't want you here. We don't want you.
Somebody else.
Very clear.
Somebody else.
Turn that camera off.
We don't want you here.
Turn that camera off. We got a team over here, bro.
Hey, don't touch his stuff.
Don't touch his stuff. Oh, well. My name is... It's all right.
It seems as though she sought us out to talk to us.
Would you tell me to step out of the space, please?
No,
keep
this
going.
is a public space.
Please pushing the space back. Thank you. I understand that. I totally understand that. Oh, this is a public space.
She follows us to talk to
Well, you're
us.
policing space, but not public space. Keep going,
We want
please.
nobody with the movement talking to them.
Everybody respects the movement.
We don't want nobody with the movement talking to them.
Right. No, it's all right. It's public space, but not public stories. You don't get to exploit our communities and be racist and get stories and benefit off of us. It doesn't happen like that. We understand that it's not specifically. We understand it's not specifically you as individuals, but the company as a whole has exploited communities of color and continues to put out racist media. Pointer gate. You can put me on. Oh, okay. So here,
I ain't touched nothing.
if you want to get a shot in my face, telling me that we are taking footage of you, that's the only thing you can get.
You gonna turn the light on and all that, man? Come on, man. We around.
Can you say that one more time, just about the corporate thing you're talking about? I mean,
I hear the people talk.
I think you did a good job with that 20 minutes that we just watched. Is you just put an eye on it, and sometimes that's all that has to happen. Sometimes that's all that has to happen, and then you leave people to think. And I think that is the role of the journalist, and that is the role of media, and that's what being neutral is really being about, is about presenting images and presenting the words so people can come to their own decisions and their own conclusions of articulation. But I think you did a good job with that, you know.
Yeah, because it was definitely self-explanatory. It's like, you know, when you canvas a whole room, you canvas the whole neighborhood, that little area, and then you capture the emotion of the people, and you capture the real true feelings about how people feel about the white media. And that when they said they didn't want them there, that was powerful. That was real powerful, to the point she really had nothing to say. So if the black community could really enforce that power into other things, man, I'm telling you, babe, that was definitely a good job, Brother Ralph. Definitely.
I hear the people talk.
You saw what you saw, and you saw what you didn't see. Okay. We saw what we saw, and we saw what we didn't see. No, there weren't a whole lot of black folks from that neighborhood there. And that doesn't mean that there weren't any black folks there. But Black Lives Matter to who was the question. You know, the brother sought a place of comfort because, you know, maybe he was more guarded because there weren't more black folks there. So I don't know, but I think that was just the power of the clip, because just putting the camera out there, we didn't have to really even have any commentary whatsoever, because the picture painted 1,000 words. You know, and for folks to say that, oh yeah, well, we're gonna tell our own story, and as I kind of monitored it from afar, it was like, you know, yeah, we're gonna tell our own story, and media, you can't get here, and the revolution will not be televised, or a lot of our old slogans that were being co-opted out there. But revolution may have not have been televised on Channel 9, but it was sure enough Facebook, Twitter, Instagrammed, and everything else, and it was told through somebody else's lens.
Say his name! Say his name! Justice for Jamar! Justice for Jamar! Mayor Hodges! Mayor Hodges! Are we not? Are we not? As important? As important? As your other constituents? As your other constituents? Mayor Hodges! Mayor Hodges! You came all the way over here! You came all the way over here! And wouldn't even? And wouldn't even? Talk to us! Talk to us! Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Mayor Hodges! Mayor Hodges! We need a mayor! We need a mayor! More about talk! More about talk! And all about the action! And all about the action!
You know, yeah. So the fact that you televised it actually told a lie. You know what I'm saying? So, good work, Brother Ralph. Freedom Radio.
Appreciate it, brother. And that's basically what we're, you know, if nothing else, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're setting out to do. So it's only right that we set out this journey in the city of Minneapolis and the city of St. Paul, a state and two cities who have garnered a tremendous amount of attention around the issues of black people. Ironically enough, the black population here is arguably under 5% of the state. But the issues of the central issues of the cities are one of national attention or international attention. And where do black people fit into all that? So, you know, as we move to kind of like start this discussion in Minneapolis and moving east, we definitely plan on seeing some differences or some similarities with some of these perspectives, but also share the power of our media with our people. And hopefully when we see our media at least presenting a different narrative around our issues that's other than what we seem to have preference for, which is mainly the white corporate media structure. We always, like I said, let some white media be here and say that they're going to do a documentary film about black people and black issues in Minneapolis at the Walker Library. I'm sure this room would be packed with black folks dressed in suit and ties and ready to run down their family history for white media. You know, because that's just the motto. That's the motto of. That's just the model that we prefer to take part in. And I think, you know, we have to challenge ourselves to think a little broadly, to think as liberated and free people, but liberated first. So we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and leave that as an introduction into the conversation.
I hear the people talk.
Cheers, us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Is Black Lives Matter sponsored by the Democratic Party, brother?
The elements are, yeah, absolutely.
This is Liberation and Education, 2016, live on location at the Walker Library, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Peace.
Freedom Radio.
Freedom Radio.